Usually when we consume a piece of media, like a book or a film or even a deep dive like this one, there is this unspoken agreement.
Right. Right, that it was constructed specifically for an audience.
Exactly. I mean, the actors project their voices so the cheap seats can hear them, or an author structures the chapters just to keep your pacing right as a reader.
Yeah, it's all very intentional.
It is. But occasionally, and I mean very occasionally, you stumble across something that defies that completely. You read a piece of text, and it feels less like, consumption and more like you were crouching in a darkened hallway.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Like you're eavesdropping on this beautiful, heartbreaking conversation that you are never, ever meant to hear.
Yes, it feels almost invasive.
It creates a real sense of transgression, honestly. The honesty is just so raw that you feel this strange guilt for being present, but you're entirely incapable of looking away.
And that feeling is at the absolute core of our source material today. So welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are looking at a blog post by Farid Novin. And this post contains a deeply poignant theatrical play. It's titled The Chairs by the Window, a play in 3 movements.
And the setting for this is just brilliantly claustrophobic.
It really is. So we are placed in the common room of a retirement home. It's a rainy evening. The text actually notes that the room smells of old upholstery and institutional tea, which, paints quite a picture.
It really sets that specific mood.
Yeah. And outside the window, a city park is getting dark. And inside, we have these 4 octogenarians who have lived these incredibly dense, heavy lives.
Right. Let's go over who they are.
Yeah, so first there's Henry, an 82-year-old retired history teacher. His wife, Margaret, who is former pianist. Then we have Samuel, an 84-year-old retired civil engineer, and his wife, Elena, a former political activist.
But they aren't the only ones in the room, right? We also have this silent presence.
Right, the observers.
Yeah. Sitting across from them, kind of half in shadow, is this young couple, Julian, who's a 29-year-old lawyer, and his partner, Lucia, a graduate student.
And they don't interact with the older characters at all.
Not at all. They simply watch and they listen. They essentially serve as our surrogates in the room, taking it all in just like we are.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we aren't just looking at a script about 4 older people passing the time on a rainy night. We are diving into the mechanics of aging, the terrifying fragility of memory, and really that question that sits at the back of your mind when you're lying awake at 2 a.m.
Which is, what does it actually mean to leave a permanent mark on the world?
Exactly. And the play confronts that immediately.
It does. It starts not with the physical decay of aging, which you might expect, but with the mind. Movement explores this chilling realization that your past, like the actual objective data of your life, is slowly evaporating.
Yeah, the characters are debating the life of a mutual friend named Peter Weiss. And they are completely stuck on the details.
Right. They can't agree on whether Peter played the accordion or the violin.
Which seems like a big difference.
Do you think so? And they can't even agree if he died in 2009 or some totally other year.
And Henry observes this debate happening, and he delivers this line that it forces you to pause. He says, "That is how death wins, not by killing us,
Yeah.
by reducing us to clarification."
Oh, the mechanism there is just fascinating.
Right, what is he getting at there?
Well, Henry is pointing out that a human life is wildly complex. I mean, Peter Weiss was a man with passions, contradictions. He had a specific laugh, a specific way of walking into a room.
Yeah, all those little human details.
Exactly. But time forces all of that 3-dimensional humanity through this tiny funnel until absolutely nothing is left but uncertain trivia.
Was it the accordion? Was it 2009?
Right. And when those facts blur, the reality of the person blurs. They become an outline of a person rather than the person themselves.
And then Elena takes that fear a step further, which is just gut-wrenching. While she's staring out at the rain, she admits that she isn't afraid of typical things, like taxes or physical pain.
Her fear is much more existential.
Yeah. Her greatest terror is that one day she will speak the name of someone she loved deeply. Like she will say the name out loud in a room, and the faces looking back at her will just be politely blank.
It's the fear of being the last one holding the memory.
Exactly. If you are the only person left on Earth holding a memory of someone, and nobody else can validate it, it's as if that person has ceased to exist outside of your own skull.
And Margaret quietly concludes that when Elena eventually passes away, all of those forgotten people will die a second time.
Oof.
Yeah. It completely shifts our understanding of grief. Because for these characters, grief is no longer this raw, unpredictable emotional shock. It has become an administrative process.
An administrative process, right?
It's a bureaucratic whittling down of their world.
Which brings up Samuel. Samuel actually makes a dark joke about that exact bureaucratic feeling. He says funerals have started to feel like committee meetings to him.
Yes, and Henry plays right along with it.
He does. Henry says, motion carried, another friend removed from circulation. And Samuel replies, seconded unanimously. And I have to admit, I found myself laughing when I read that, but it was a very, very uncomfortable laugh.
Well, the text actually notes that their laughter dies quickly there.
Yeah.
Because they are employing this administrative vocabulary to manage a volume of loss that would simply break them if they processed it emotionally.
It's totally a coping mechanism.
Absolutely. If you treat the disappearance of your entire peer group as a parliamentary procedure, you don't have to face the existential void that it leaves behind.
Which seems to trigger Henry's rather intense rant about evolution right after this.
Oh, the shark rant.
The shark rant. He starts complaining that 4 billion years of biology gave sharks functional immortality. You know, they haven't had to evolve in 400 million years because they're perfect machines.
Right.
But what did the grand finale of evolution give humans? We got consciousness, poetry, and then as a reward, we get disappearing short-term memory, arthritis, and toenail fungus.
And Samuel points out that sharks have never written a sonnet.
Sure.
But Henry argues that the deep ocean is a much better gift than poetry, especially when poetry comes packaged with prostate problems and faculty meetings.
I have to challenge Henry's framing here, though,
Yeah.
to you. I mean, he's comparing the miracle of human awareness to toenail fungus. Is he actually this cynical, or is he just using sarcasm to mask the grief of outliving his own era? Because he spent his entire life teaching history, right? A subject that's predicated on the idea that humans actually matter.
Yeah, you've hit on the central contradiction of his character there. Henry spent 39 years standing in front of young people, insisting that history has a discernible shape and that individuals leave meaningful marks.
Right.
But now, at 82, he's looking at his vanishing peers and realizing the universe is fundamentally indifferent to our faculty meetings and our sonnets.
So it's defense.
Exactly. When Samuel asks him if any of their ambitions or careers actually mattered, Henry replies that of course they mattered, because otherwise they wasted 80 years. His sarcasm is entirely a shield against the terror of irrelevance.
Wow. Okay, so if the universe is indifferent and your peers are dying off, the natural next step is to look for proof of your existence in the people who are still here.
You look to your children.
Which shifts the dynamic entirely. The play calls this next phase King Lear in the suburbs, and it zeroes in on the painful realization of their own redundancy.
Redundancy really is the perfect word for it. The world, including their own offspring, is moving forward without them.
There's that moment Margaret is pouring tea and mentions someone called the house yesterday.
And Henry asks if it was their son.
Yeah, and Margaret deadpans, no, the Pope.
Just a great line, the implication being that the Pope is just as busy and unreachable as their own child.
And then Samuel, the former civil engineer, has this incredibly sharp analogy about this. He says their children visit them the way governments dutifully inspect historical monuments.
Oh, that's so brutal.
It is. He says the children show up briefly with this careful, quiet respect, but they are hiding the low-level panic of someone who isn't quite sure of the protocol anymore. They are maintaining an artifact, not engaging with a parent.
Elena strongly dislikes Samuel's analogy, though, because she understands her daughter is busy living a full life.
Right. She's trying to be fair.
She is. But she admits to looking at the digital photos her daughter sends from a vacation in Italy. You know, these highly curated photos.
Sunsets, beautiful cathedrals, wine glasses held up in a toast.
Exactly. But Elena says she studies the edges of the pictures. She's looking for something animal, as she calls it. She is searching the corners for evidence that her daughter still actively needs her.
The word animal is so striking there. She doesn't want a polite text message. She wants that biological, visceral need a child has for its mother.
But the daughter is perfectly capable now.
Yeah. Elena realizes that the punishment of parenthood is built directly into the achievement. You spend decades raising a child to be independent, to not need you, and then you have to actually live with the success of that project.
Which brings us back to King Lear. Henry offers a literary theory that perfectly captures this feeling of being aged out of your own life's work.
Yeah, the analogy that came to mind for me when reading this was training your replacement at a corporate job.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine you've run a department for 40 years, it's time to retire, and you spend your last month training a 20-something to take your desk. But in this scenario, the desk is your family. The desk is your entire role in the world.
Right.
And Henry argues that King Lear isn't a play about a man descending into madness at all.
Not at all. He views the madness as a secondary symptom.
Okay, so what's the primary disease?
The primary disease is redundancy. Lear is a king discovering the horrifying reality that his kingdom continues to function flawlessly without him. The indifference of the world is the actual wound. Madness is simply the psychological break that happens when an ego that large cannot metabolize that indifference.
That feels incredibly bleak.
Yeah.
I mean, if our children are supposed to be our living legacy, but their independence renders us redundant, where does that leave us? Are we just supposed to accept being obsolete?
Well, Margaret provides a really crucial counterbalance here. While the men are agonizing over their loss of authority, Margaret suggests that a parent or a teacher's legacy isn't found in being continuously needed.
Okay.
You find your life's work in the invisible shape of what someone else became, even if that person completely forgets where the shape originated.
And Henry has a story that tests that exact theory. He mentions a former student, someone brilliant, who went on to publish a major academic book. And the student actually sent Henry a signed copy.
Right, and Henry was thrilled at first, feeling like his legacy was secured.
Until he read the acknowledgement section.
Yeah. The student thanked 11 other people in great detail before even mentioning Henry.
So what is Henry's reaction to this slight? He doesn't just, put the book on a shelf and move on.
No, not Henry.
He reads this dense academic text 3 more times, intensely hunting through the chapters, trying to find an argument or a paragraph that was secretly his. He wants to find his own fingerprint in the student's work.
And he finally decides he found one.
Though he admits he isn't sure if it was actually his idea or if he just desperately needed it to be. Do you think that's just his ego talking there, or is it something deeper?
I think it's absolutely a survival instinct, not just ego. He is claiming the shape that Margaret talked about. He needs to believe he is part of the invisible architecture of the future.
Because the alternative is just too dark.
Right. The alternative, that he had no impact at all, is unthinkable. We build the future, Margaret says, and then the future walks away from us.
But, the shape we leave in other people only accounts for the parts of our lives that were visible to them. What about our internal lives? The secrets, the choices we made quietly?
Yeah, the hidden stuff.
The play tackles this head-on in Movement Third, where the storm outside gets worse, the lights in the common room flicker, and Henry exhumes a massive secret right there in front of everyone.
He brings up their second year at university, an autumn day in the courtyard by the library. He asks Samuel if he remembers Elena dancing.
And then Henry states plainly to the room, with his wife Margaret sitting right there, that he was in love with Elena.
And Samuel immediately gets defensive, which makes total sense. I mean, 60 years have passed. Samuel married Elena. Henry married Margaret. He asks Henry why on earth he's bringing this up now. What could he possibly want?
And Henry's justification for the confession ties everything together. He explains that his memory loss has escalated. He forgot the exact color of his very first classroom.
Was it yellow or green? The detail is simply gone.
Right. And he realizes that when his memory eventually fails completely, anything he has kept hidden inside his own mind will be deleted from the universe. He says he just wanted one true thing to survive by speaking it aloud so that it existed physically in a room, if only for a moment.
It's an act of desperation. He's throwing his secret out into the world to save it from the void.
But in doing so, he places this enormous, heavy burden right on Margaret's lap. And she asks him a question that would terrify anyone in a 50-year marriage. She asks, "Did you love me?"
And Henry replies, "With my life."
But Margaret doesn't let him off the hook. She says, "That is not the same question."
No, it's really not.
Henry takes a moment, and then he delivers what he claims is the truest thing he has ever said. He tells Margaret, "I chose you, not as a consolation, as a choice. They are different things.
Yeah.
I chose you, and I built everything on that choice, and I would do it again."
That distinction is so powerful.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Think about the cultural narrative we are constantly fed about romance. You constantly hear about destiny, soulmates, the idea that the universe aligns the stars to bring two specific people together.
Right, the whole fairy tale.
Exactly. But the play completely rejects that. Henry is arguing that an active, deliberate choice carries vastly more weight than destiny. He didn't passively fall into a predestined life with Margaret. He chose her, and then he put his back into it for 54 years, building a shared reality to honor that specific choice.
And Elena reinforces that perspective. She tells Henry that even if he had confessed his love in that courtyard 60 years ago, nothing would have changed.
Really?
Yeah, she says they were already carrying their eventual futures inside them, arranged like furniture in a house that hadn't been built yet. It's this profound acknowledgement that our choices dictate our architecture.
But Samuel points out that if Henry had spoken up, maybe the house would have had different furniture.
Samuel serves as such an interesting counterweight in this scene.
He really does, because while Henry is obsessed with his emotional legacy, Samuel is grappling with a literal physical legacy. Samuel spent his life engineering bridges, and he brings up the Mortensen Bridge, a project he poured his absolute soul into.
Yeah, Samuel personally designed the load calculations for a structure that handles 60,000 vehicles every single day.
That's massive.
It is. And for decades, he believed that engineering feat was enough. He accepted the trade-off, which was anonymity in exchange for permanence. The people driving over his bridge are, arguing with their spouses, listening to the radio, totally oblivious to the man who built the concrete beneath their tires.
Henry describes that specific phenomenon as erasure with infrastructure.
God, it's a razor-sharp description. Samuel is finally confronting the flaw in his trade-off. The bridge is permanent, yes, but Samuel is not.
Right.
And the bridge has absolutely nothing to articulate about Samuel the man. It is just concrete and steel. It was made by someone, but to the commuters, it could have been made by anyone.
And then Elena steps in here with a moment of just staggering grace. She looks at her husband and says softly, "It was made by you."
And Samuel admits he desperately needs to believe that matters, that the invisible truth of his labor has value, even if the world never associates his name with the concrete.
This struggle over choices and permanence leads Margaret to a devastating conclusion about the nature of a human life. She says the true tragedy isn't that we make bad choices. I mean, some are good, some are bad, some are just the inevitable result of circumstance.
The real tragedy, she argues, is that every choice eventually becomes unrecoverable.
Unrecoverable.
Yeah. You cannot go back in time and undo a decision, but even worse, you can't perfectly preserve the decision either.
Because memory warps it.
Exactly. As time passes, your own memory warps the details. The other people who were there die off. The physical places where your life happened are bulldozed and rebuilt.
Right.
Eventually, your entire existence becomes a story that only you remember, and you're telling it in a language that the rest of the world has forgotten how to speak.
Which begs a massive question for you, the listener. How are we supposed to process a reality that heavy? I mean, if our legacies are mostly invisible, our choices are unrecoverable, and our memories are unreliable, is the whole project just an exercise in despair?
Well, the play anticipates that exact sense of dread, and it addresses it by finally bringing the young couple, Julian and Lucia, into focus.
The observers in the shadows.
Right. They have been watching this heavy existential dissection from the edges of the common room.
And Julian is visibly shaken by what they've just witnessed. He turns to Lucia and asks her if she thinks those older couples were actually happy with their lives.
And Lucia replies that she thinks sometimes they were.
But Julian, seeking some kind of absolute reassurance, asks if sometimes is really enough.
And Lucia offers this remarkably grounded philosophy for a 27-year-old. She tells him that happiness is not a constant state. The total quantity of happiness available to a human isn't infinite. It arises in intervals.
Intervals.
Yeah. Your job is to collect those intervals and simply hope that the spaces between them were at least interesting.
Julian finds that deeply depressing, which I get. But Lucia draws his attention back to Henry and Margaret. Henry just laid bare a 60-year-old secret about another woman, and Margaret absorbed it. Yet they are still sitting together, holding hands in the fading light. Lucia admits she doesn't know what to call that kind of endurance, except something.
It is definitely something.
So what does this all mean? Julian asks Lucia the ultimate question. When they are 80 years old, will they actually remember this specific night? Will they remember the smell of the room, the rain on the window, the exact look on her face?
And Lucia tells him, plainly, no.
Because memory does not function like a bank vault. I was actually trying to find a modern analogy for this, and I kept thinking about computer files.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we want our memories to be a locked, read-only PDF file. A document that can't be altered, that preserves the facts of our lives perfectly forever.
But Lucia is suggesting that human memory is actually more like a Wikipedia page.
Exactly. It is constantly being edited, revised, and subtly rewritten by our changing emotions, our biases, and the sheer erosion of time.
That analogy fits perfectly. Lucia explains that by the time they reach 80, their memory of this rainy evening won't be a factual recording. It will be something they have recited to themselves so many times that it will have transitioned from a memory into a story.
And Julian asks if that's a failure, like if it's wrong for facts to degrade into stories.
And Lucia says no. She says, stories are how we carry things that are too heavy to carry as facts.
I love that line.
It is the absolute antidote to the despair of the earlier movements. When Henry was agonizing over the forgotten color of his classroom or the exact year Peter Weiss died, he was treating memory as an accounting ledger.
Right, trying to balance the books.
Yeah. But Lucia is arguing that perfect retention isn't the point. The purpose of memory isn't to catalog trivia. The purpose is to prove that we were once alive, that we felt something profound in a specific place.
And, as she notes, while holding Julian's hand, to prove that if we were very lucky, someone else was there to witness it with us.
It offers such a profound sense of resolution. Across the room, Samuel finally moves a piece on the chessboard. Elena closes her eyes and whispers a name that none of the others recognize. But they are still there, anchored to one another.
It makes you look at your own daily routine entirely differently, doesn't it? I mean, think about your life right now. Look at the spreadsheets you are building, the emails you are sending, the projects you are pouring your stress into. Are you just building a Mortensen bridge? An anonymous piece of infrastructure.
And even if you are, the play argues that the anonymity doesn't erase the value of the effort. You are leaving a shape in the people around you. You are arranging the furniture in the house of your own future.
You're actively choosing your life rather than waiting for destiny to handle it for you. And maybe it's time to start paying more attention to your own intervals of happiness before they become a story you're just trying to remember.
Absolutely.
So to wrap things up today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. At the very bottom of Farid Novin's blog post, below the text of the play, there is a single quote by the author William Faulkner.
I saw that, yeah.
It reads, "The past is never dead. It's not even past." If our memories truly are like Wikipedia pages, stories we constantly revise and re-edit to help us carry the heavy, complicated facts of our lives, does the objective historical truth of our past actually matter? Or is the subjective, heavily edited story we tell ourselves the only thing that actually keeps us moving forward? Keep an eye out for those beautiful, heartbreaking conversations you weren't meant to hear. They might just help you figure out the shape of your own story.